Hi, this is Miss Hottie from Olympian High School. We've been learning about the period between the Great War, also called World War One, and World War Two. And we are now going to continue. We were earlier talking about Gertrude Stein and Ernest Hemingway and all of these disillusioned poets and writers, which is understandable after all of the death and gore of World War One. We have a lot of fallen idols. We talked about people reevaluating how effective was democracy and debating whether or not it empowered people that were less intelligent to run the world. This is just one of the criticisms. And your book doesn't really talk about this, which is why it's interesting that the publisher has it in the slides. It may have been in a previous edition of the book. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. You guys are welcome to look it up on your own. But what the book is trying to convey to you is a sense of dismay, a sense of disillusionment, a sense of uncertainty that permeated or was pervasive in all these different facets of society. And it extended as also to religion, whereas people used to believe in, or some of them still do, obviously, in just one truth. People started to question that. They started to question if there is a God. You have people like Friedrich Nietzsche, who's a German philosopher who famously said God is dead. And all of these different existential thinkers. Really, the existentialists are more popular after World War II. So it's early on for them to kind of talk to you about existentialism. But existentialism, I've linked a video for some of my students, and you guys can Google it as well. Existentialism is the broad name ascribed to philosophers that believed that life doesn't really have a purpose unless you give it purpose, unless you give it meaning. There's no inherent meaning in things. So again, in this sense of meaninglessness. So you have Albert Camus. I read Albert Camus when I was your age, when I read The Stranger. There's also Jean-Paul Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre is one of the most famous existentialists. So these are people that you can look up. They talk about, people used to talk about humans having an essence, a certain thing they had to fulfill in life, a purpose in life. And Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus challenged that. You have other discoveries in the physical world. So in science, you have Albert Einstein developing the theory of special relativity, which basically argues that the measurement of time and space is relative to the observer. So again, reinforcing this sense of what do we really know? Even the smartest scientists on Earth don't really know. Werner Heisenberg also published a book where he described the uncertainty principle, which basically says that you can't measure how fast the velocity of a subatomic particle and also say where it is. You could only give probability calculations. Again, reinforcing the sense of uncertainty. And these uncertainty sorts of feelings and concepts extended into the humanities and social sciences. For example, anthropologists used to think that they could objectively observe other ethnic groups and they would record what they saw. Well, this calls into question the entire notion of objectivity, because if measurements are influenced by the observer, then obviously if you study another ethnic group, that's going to influence how they behave. Well, at least you can trust yourself, right? You can trust your mind. No. According to a doctor named Sigmund Freud from Vienna, he started to look at problems in the body as potentially having a psychological instead of a physiological cause. So he started to talk about something called the subconscious or the unconscious mind. And he said that we could get to figure out what was it that there was this conflict between our desires that we don't even know we have, which is also like an awkward feeling or a sense of uncertainty. Like we don't even know what we really want. There are these unexplainable or rather unknown desires that we have that express themselves in dreams. And through free association, he could get his patients to tell him sort of what their deep desires are, what they're repressing to their conscious mind or pushing down out of their consciousness. So he could figure that out through the interpretation of dreams or free association through psychotherapy. And then, of course, the idea of the subconscious took off and it was applied to mythology, religion, literature, art, this ideas of the subconscious or the unconscious mind. And you can read in the book about his Oedipus complex, the idea that little boys have a secret attraction to their mothers that causes hostility to their fathers. There's also the Electra complex. So this is unsettling, disquieting, because you can't even rely on your own. You don't even know what you're actually thinking. And Sigmund Freud, people say, tended to exaggerate the sexual component, or the sexual urges that he said were repressed because they were societally unacceptable. These days, Freud is less in vogue than he was in the early 1900s. And anyway, you'll read about that in your book.